Yo, what is up, Bitcoiners? Ah, man, I just got to say I love what I get to do. I love these conversations that I get to have with incredible Bitcoiners. I've said it so many times, but these conversations have been pivotal to my journey into becoming a fully fledged Bitcoiner, a fully fledged miner, someone who is passionate about the space and advocates for self custody and sovereign identity and all these different tropes that we evangelize in Bitcoin. I really feel like these conversations for myself personally have been instrumental in my journey, and it's just so amazing. So today we have another awesome guest. So Kent Halliburton is the CEO and co-founder of SaaS Mining. SaaS Mining is an interesting company doing a whole new type of mining, and it's mining as a service, software, Bitcoin mining as a software service. They are really pioneering this new way to mine Bitcoin without really having to get your hands dirty, I guess, for lack of a better word. They're really taking the idea of wild sats to a whole new level. What are wild sats, you ask? Well, wild sats are satoshis that are directly mined from the Bitcoin network. Unlike those bought from an exchange or received from another individual, wild sats are freshly minted and untainted by third-party interactions. So this is something that SaaS Mining has built their brand around, is bringing wild sats to sovereign individuals. So we're going to dive straight in. We're going to hear from Kent. We're going to hear his rabbit hole Bitcoin story, and we're going to learn how SaaS Mining came to be and what their core focus is, what their ethos is. Before we do that, I've got something to go. There it is.
Join the Mastermind Club, a weekly gathering of Bitcoin miners sharing insights to help you optimize or build your mining business. Our community fosters open discussion and collaboration, connecting you with experts who can help you overcome challenges and find solutions faster. Every other week, we host the Mastermind Deep Dive, where industry leaders delve into the financial, operational, and optimization hurdles faced by miners like you. Brought to you by Bitcoin Mining World.
All right, check it out, guys. Go to the QR code in the bottom left-hand side of your screen, maybe right-hand side, the bottom corner of your screen, to sign up for our free mastermind. Every other week, we go into a deep dive about certain topics. In January, by the time this episode comes out, it'll be January. We're doing a pleb home heat. I'm calling it Heat Punks month. So we'll have two really awesome deep dives, one from Ryan Reminiger and one from Tyler Stevens. So be sure to be a part of that, join the community, and learn how you can thrive as a Bitcoin miner. Speaking of thriving as a Bitcoin miner, we have Kent Halliburton on the show today. Thank you so much for joining us, Kent.
Awesome, man. Thanks for allowing me to be here. I've enjoyed our conversation so far.
Yeah, we've had some cool interactions, some cool crossings. Come to find out, you're a fellow Oregonian as well. You started your career, your life, I guess, in Oregon, and you kind of moved away to do better, bigger and better things. But it's kind of a cool little cross that we have, a little parallel line, I guess we could call it. I want to start this podcast off with, rabbit hole story. Everybody loves to hear the rabbit hole story. It's a little cliche in Bitcoin, but I love to hear them. So if you want to just take it from wherever you want to start, maybe, from when you graduated in Oregon and like how you kind of progressed into SaaS mining and Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think it makes sense considering we've got the crossover there as the Southern Oregon coasties. So yeah, I grew up on the Oregon coast, actually on a cranberry farm about a couple hours south of you in a place called Bandon, Oregon. Graduated high school and couldn't wait to get out of that town of population 3,000, and wound up going to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo to get a computer engineering degree. And I was gifted a gateway computer. This is late 90s, early 2000s time frame, and I got a computer engineering background or degree on that. And ostensibly, I went there to do computer engineering, but it was also to surf, and that was a great experience. Learned to surf, and that drove a lot of other passions in life. But after college, I went into rooftop solar, and rooftop solar, from a computer engineering background was quite a different jump, and worked in that for about a decade and really learned a lot about working with people, leadership. At the end of my career there, I was leading a team of about 100. We were selling and installing rooftop solar systems across 9 states in the US. And I was also in charge of the software, running the operations, as well as acquiring, or not acquiring, but integrating companies after the corporation acquired them. So it was a lot of responsibility. I was competing against Elon Musk's cousins. We're publicly traded, and it was just a lot of pressure, basically. And the board brought in a new CEO, meant to level up the company. I said, yeah, I don't think this guy knows where he's going to take the company very well. So this is a good time to throw on a backpack and go for a walkabout. And I spent 2 years traveling. And those 2 years were the time period where I both fell in love with a Portuguese woman and Bitcoin. And so my life started over in 2016, living the American dream, but in Portugal. Which in a lot of ways is very similar to the geography of California. So it was a similar climate that I left and wound up relocating to. But, at this point in time, like I was just far down the Bitcoin rabbit hole and wanted to, earn a living working in Bitcoin. And so I tried my hand at concierge services, just trying to onboard people. This is circa 2016 or 2018, excuse me, reference. And tried my hand at trading. I did the shitcoin circuit. That's for sure. And then tried mining from home. What else? Bitcoin ATMs. Trying to fund renewable energy projects with security tokens, whole bunch of things. Nothing's really stuck until I read that book that actually is behind you, The Price of Tomorrow. And I read Jeff Booth's take on solar meeting Bitcoin mining. And I was like, oh, of course, my energy background belonged in Bitcoin mining. So I found Will, the founder of SaaS Mining, through a solar podcast where I knew the host, and the host put me in touch with Will, the founder of SaaS Mining, and I helped him raise some capital, and was a fail forward situation because that capital was not enough to actually go build the mines that we had developed. And we decided to pivot the company to build this mining as a service opportunity to democratize access to Bitcoin mining. And now I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've got not only a mine in Wisconsin, but one in Paraguay. And by the time this airs, if this is coming out in January, we'll have our third mine in Norway live and operational. And so what we do is make mining accessible to the masses. We arrange all the data center opportunity on the back end, and then we allow people to purchase mining rigs on our website, and then have like a custom user experience. So akin to Uber for hailing a taxi instead of walking out on the street or calling your buddy's brother to drive over and pick you up, right? As taxis used to be. So that's kind of what we're doing in the mining sector. So yeah, it's maybe not just my journey, but a bit about how SaaS Mining came to be where it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for kind of shedding some light on that. You've had a very exhilarating experience, from the outside looking in. I mean, getting to, grow up as a computer engineer, or growing up, graduating, getting your computer engineering degree, and then moving, out of the United States and experiencing a different culture, falling in love with not just your future wife, but a new monetary network. And so it sounds like, you really hit that perfect, beautiful symmetry between, that better life and finding a wife to share it with. So, congratulations to you, man. I think that it's always better to start a business as a man. It's always better to start a business having a strong woman behind you that loves you and supports you. So that's always just like a perk on it. I want to dive a little bit into SaaS mining. What really, why is it so important for SaaS mining to be a opportunity for new Bitcoiners looking to get into Bitcoin mining? Why did you and Will feel it was necessary to build this company?
Well, I think first of all, we took inspiration from Compass. We, and I think that there's a lot of reputational things that have happened as a result of Compass being out there in the marketplace for like our ecosystem. But what we could clearly see when we decided to make this pivot. So we raised $1 million in, this was 2021, and we need at least seven to go build the mines that we developed. And so we had a good think. We could see Compass's growth, and we saw like, hey, it looks like there's some chinks in the armor. We think we can build a better mousetrap here. So let's go do that. And when we came to market, what we saw was that there's just a lot of room for improving the experience and spending time on the customer service background to do that. So the opportunity was really ripe because we could see that there was so much demand. And really, having studied this market now for several years, the demand comes from one simple reason why, which is people are ultimately looking to acquire Bitcoin at a discount and without having the constraints of going through the exchange-based system, right? So no matter how you go about doing that, your tokens are going to be, or your Bitcoin is going to be tainted to some degree by that whole interaction with the surveillance state. So as a result, there's just this underlying undercurrent for people to acquire their own wild sats and to do so at a discount to what they could pick them up at an exchange. So you can actually get your dollar to stretch a bit further. And, it's a really interesting experience as well, Trevor. When I was in Portugal doing concierge services, I was part of Bitcoin, or was it Business International, I think was the name of it, like a business networking group where, you get in a room and everybody has lunch together and shills each other their services. And one thing I kept experiencing is people that knew nothing about Bitcoin, but as they kind of understood the basics, is that almost everybody, at the very first time that they understood that mining could be done, that's where they wanted to start. And I just got off the phone 2 days ago with a fellow that lives in Melbourne, and he was brand new to Bitcoin, not complete. I mean, he had a couple grand worth of Bitcoin sitting on an exchange someplace, but he wanted now to start really acquiring. He wanted to dollar cost average into a position. And there really is no better way to dollar cost average into a position than through mining. And so us opening up that opportunity to the masses not only decentralizes the hash rate around the world, but it gives people, in my opinion, a better experience for acquiring their Bitcoin rather than doing it through the exchanges. And there's a couple like psychological points that a lot of people miss about mining, and one of them is the difference between buying on an exchange and mining to acquire your Bitcoin in the thought process. So a lot of people will say like, hey, cool, a mining rig, let's say it costs $5,000, right? If I go buy $5,000 worth of Bitcoin on exchange, I would have more sats than if I mine those. And the problem with that thinking is you're actually comparing apples and oranges, because when you buy a piece of mining hardware or a mining rig, you have 3 years of useful life. So that thing is going to crank out Bitcoin for you over the next 3 years, as long as you're paying for the electricity to make it run. That's a very different thing than going and buying $5,000 worth of Bitcoin on exchange today. And that has a different risk profile, different risk appetite, because what you're doing in essence is you're buying a hard asset that generates cash flow for you, cash in the form of Bitcoin over the next 3 years. So that's going to attract a different type of person that feels a little more risk averse to acquiring their Bitcoin from like a plunge perspective by taking that same capital, go buying it on exchange. So as a result, I actually think that mining as a service is opening the doors to more people. And so kind of back to this guy in Melbourne, right? He was pretty much new to really wanting to get a bigger Bitcoin position, but he'd come to the conclusion already that if our service, mining as a service, was available, it was a better way for him to accumulate and build his position than anything else. Because once he's made that investment, sets up his monthly service plan, well, he's just accumulating Bitcoin for now until he no longer feels his Bitcoin mining rig is competitive.
I mean, there's a couple ways I could take this. I think the first thing I want to point out is that like there's a lot of hosting services, hosting providers in the Bitcoin mining space. And when I first came into the Bitcoin mining space a little under a year ago, it's 11 months, 12 9 10 months ago, somewhere around that time. I was about in February. One thing I kept hearing a lot is that this bar for hosting is so low that almost anyone could come in and do a much better job. What I think is important for people to understand about hosting is that if you live in a place like California or, other high energy cost places where, your electricity cost could be 25, 30, or even 50 cents a kilowatt hour, mining in your home is not really feasible, like at all. Even for someone like myself who enjoys the aspect of mining for heat. I mean, it's really economically unviable. Whereas what the service that you're offering is, not only is it like a full stack where you get the mining hardware, you get this beautiful dashboard that tells you exactly what you're earning, how much it's costing you, all these different things. You're also providing the education that kind of comes to learning about Bitcoin mining and understanding the decentralized aspects of it, and providing people a opportunity to get in at a low cost of power. Because as a hosting provider, you're working out the negotiations with the power providers, you're working out the negotiations with the landowners, maybe you're the landowners, maybe whatever it is, you're doing all the hard work on the back end, and you're just basically saying, hey, you want to use our service, this is how many miners you want to have, this is your fee per month, and this is what you're going to earn based on that fee, based on the miners that you're using. So I really like that model, and I think it's a model that a lot of people in the next coming years, especially as Bitcoin starts to really take off. We're over 100,000. I think right now we're sitting 99,573. Either way, like, Bitcoin is on top of everybody's mind. They're thinking about it, and the best way to acquire Bitcoin KYC free is through mining. So I think your service, the Bitcoin mining as a service that you offer through SaaS Mining, is something that a lot of people are going to want to take advantage of. Can you talk a little bit about like the different sites that you have? It's kind of leading into, the question of like this Norway site that you guys have, but talk about a little bit about your Wisconsin site, which was the first one that you set up, and then the Paraguay site. What are some of the cost benefits there?
Yeah. So the first site we set up was on a drainage in Wisconsin, and we kind of stumbled into the opportunity, but we launched it in January 2023. It's a megawatt worth of power available there. So we've got about 350 mining rigs up and running, and have been since January of last year. And it was a proof of concept. Like, did we build the software in such a way that customers would be attracted to it, to the value proposition? Does this all work? And it did. And because of the success, I mean, we feel that if you think back to what January 2023 was like, that was kind of the depths of the bear market this last cycle, right? That was the quarter after Sam Bankman-Fried decided to blow us all out of the water for a bit and make us the laughing stock of the culture, right? But we all hung in there. We survived, and now we've had the last laugh, of course. But it was a tough time. I was actually like, hey, are we going to be able to survive this? Are people going to show up and want this experience? And yeah, they did. And because of that success, we said, all right, well, we filled this. Like, what's next? We better find some other place to start funneling this demand. And so we found a wonderful opportunity in Paraguay, and we acquired 5 megawatts worth of capacity, and we knew we needed to scale into it. And we were able to, and so that was most of the end of last year, and first half of this year was filling that. And now we've got our Norway site. And I think, before going on to talk about the Norway site, I think one of the things that's really proven successful for us is, as you said, like the hosting space as we experienced it coming in has a lot of reputational damage, right? A lot of people have had bad experiences. And so our just showing up, answering the phones, being customer focused, and providing a transparent user experience, I think has made all the difference. And part of that user experience is that we align our incentives. So, when we offer clients the mining rigs and the service fees, which is electricity plus maintenance, there's no markup on those things. It's not how we make money. Instead, how we make money is taking a percentage of the pool payout, right? And so in the case of Paraguay, that's been just 15%. And that's basically what's funded our growth, is our ability to get mining rigs plugged in and then to keep them up for our clients to the best of our ability. And so we source the data center and the value proposition, and then we've put a lot of capital and commitment into that, and then go out there to the public and say, okay, now it's available. And for reference, Norway opens for us next week. And for reference, that is third week of December. And it's taken us since June of this year to pull all the pieces together, right? So it's a non-trivial thing to be able to offer this to our clients and get it live. And we're particularly excited about it because it's the first data center that I'm aware of that's available to the public, where on one side, they're hydro-cooled mining machines, and would powered by hydro electricity, which is the primary source of grid energy there. All of our data centers are primarily hydropower. First to 100% hydropower, and this one is like 90%. The other 10% is coming primarily from wind, which is the grid energy mix in northern Norway. But the this particular site, the reason why the costs are as low as they are, even though it's grid, is because it's north of the Arctic Circle and the heat is being monetized. So it's a data center within a bigger building, and that building has been having to pay in the winter months where it's literally minus 17 degrees today. I just talked to our data center operators there. It's minus 17 and they're finishing construction, and wind was blowing too hard for these Scandinavian guys to even be up on the roof working on the dry cooler. And it's just fantastic to hear like what they're going through to make this opportunity happen. But the heat there is really dramatic. The need is right. I mean, Trevor, you're originally from Alaska, so you understand this, but like it's serious stuff. But because of the heat from the data center, they're pulling out the oil boiler that's been the primary source of heat, and now just have a little electric boiler that's tiny in comparison. It's like the backup to the data center in case something happens to the data center. So here we are, not only like carbon-free power, but also removing an oil boiler out of the equation and heating an entire building with the heat, which they're paying us to do. And that offsets our electricity costs, which, then makes it cheaper for our clients to acquire their Bitcoin. And then part of that heat is also being shunted off to the side to dry fish locally. And so it's really going to be a demonstration site. Yeah. I mean, fish is a big part of the economy up there.
So I wanna just pause you for a second, because there's a couple of things that I want to just like unravel here a little bit. Our audience, if they've been listening for a while, they know that I am very passionate about the heat reuse side of things. But before, like, I'm gonna set that to the side for a second. The simple fact, like, you guys are breaking so much FUD here, because you're basically running off of 99% renewable energy. So you're a Bitcoin mining service that is offering an excellent service to your clients, to your end users, and you're doing that in a way that is renewable and green. I mean, that's something that people don't realize. When they're first coming into Bitcoin, they hear all this FUD, all this garbage about like, oh, Bitcoin's using all this energy, Bitcoin's destroying the planet, blah 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 blah. And then at the same time, this is the thing, at the same time, these people who are saying that and are repeating this FUD, they're also driving their Teslas and talking about how their Teslas are going to save the planet and all this stuff, when it's like, do you realize that your Tesla is like, the way that it's designed, the way that it's created, they're mining cobalt, they're mining like all this terrible stuff for the environment. However, on the side of Bitcoin, when you guys are mining, you're basically completely carbon neutral. You're not polluting the air, you're not like endangering workers, nobody's breathing in toxic fumes and chemicals to like make this happen. So like, there's that side of things. So I love to hear that you guys are pretty much completely green. I'm just going to say completely green. And well, you are completely green. Yeah. 100% renewable energies, completely green, like doing this beautiful thing for the planet, for the human race, for yourselves, for your company, for your end users. It's a beautiful thing. But then, and this is my favorite part, then you talk about this site that you have coming up online in Norway, where you're using the heat. These are resistive heaters. We've talked about it so many times in the past on the show, is like, a Bitcoin miner is just a resistive heater. And the amount of energy that you put into it is the amount of heat that you get out in a different form of energy. Energy cannot be created nor destroyed. It can just change. And so you're getting, 1,000 watts of energy turns into 1,000 watts of heat, basically. That is the basic conversion. And so you're then taking that heat and doing two incredible things with it. You're allowing a population to who they're not even your end user. You're not even their, like, they're not even part of your network. You know what I mean? In the honest grand scheme of things, but they are benefiting from your business because now they also get cheaper heat. And then let's also tie in the fact that now they can raise fish, and that it's blowing my mind what you're talking about, and this service that you're building, these mines that you're operating. And if I think about like where the Bitcoin mining space is heading, this is it. This right here is it. These small, as Bob Burnett would call them, horse class miners, 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts in different locations around the world, using the heat as a byproduct to bolster your business and your revenue and provide a much better and cleaner product to your end user. It's just, there's not really a question in that. It's just a beautiful observation that I'm having. And I want the audience to know that, like, man, SaaS mining is pioneering the future when it comes to how Bitcoin mining is going to be perceived and done in the coming, 10, 20, 30 years.
Well, thank you, Trevor. I'm glad you're seeing the vision that we saw, and it was just so to tie this full circle and have a kind of a kumbaya moment here. So really, the impetus of this comes from growing up on a farm just a couple hours south of where you live, right? Like having that sort of experience and realizing like what it's like to feel a sense of harmony with the planet is kind of my personal driving ethos, and what got me into rooftop solar. This is well before ESG, right? And rooftop solar, like there's a lot of people in the Bitcoin community that speak ill of solar, and they primarily mean these big institutional or industrial scale like solar plants. But nobody really hates on the ability to generate your own electricity and be a self-sovereign individual, for a rooftop solar system. And I just saw that as another way that people could be sovereign and more in harmony with the planet. And that's exactly why we've positioned the brand to be carbon neutral, carbon free power, is so that we can be part of the solution in breaking the FUD and giving people the moral high card to feel good about making the decision to acquire their Bitcoin through mining. At the end of the day, the numbers are what cause people to, and this is the exact same in rooftop solar. It's the numbers that and the economics that drive people to make the decision to buy either of those products. But giving clients the moral high ground to know that they're producing that power in a clean way, or harnessing that power in a clean way that's creating their Bitcoin. Well, now suddenly when I show up at the party and talk about Bitcoin with my buddies, like I can be proud of the fact that I'm mining my own Bitcoin, instead of like, oh God, my buddies are going to beat me up because I'm mining Bitcoin and boiling the oceans, right? And so like for us, there's a strategic advantage to just saying, no, we're gonna put our foot down and just say everything that we mine is going to be carbon free powered, and that's just how it is, because we believe in the alignment of incentives, because ultimately power that's created at the wrong time and place is the cheapest, and a lot of that is carbon free power.
Yeah, absolutely. You hear about this a lot, wind farms, solar farms, the wind doesn't always blow, the sun doesn't always shine. And so you have to have somebody who can come in and purchase that power. The wind is generally blowing the most at night when nobody's using that power, so um it's just a beautiful symbiotic relationship between Bitcoin mining and heat reuse, and then also creating a business that's profitable and makes money. Because at the end of the day, I mean, everybody who's building a business needs to make money. And so in a especially in the Bitcoin mining sector, which is I would argue one of the hardest jobs to have, because every 4 years your revenue is getting cut in half. That's not even your profit, your revenue is getting cut in half. So you have to find ways of generating more profit, more revenue through different sources. And what you guys are doing with the heat reuse side of things, using environmentally green power, it's top notch. I want to dive into, you guys also are trying to help educate the community, because you see this this relationship between the Bitcoin mining community and the Bitcoin community, and there's different ethoses between the two. What are some of the issues that you see in the Bitcoin mining community specifically, and what are you guys trying to do about it?
Yeah, I think that this is something I'm particularly passionate about. Right, it's taken me a while to observe this, and I think Steve Barber is the one that first pointed it out to me. Well, actually, not personally, but just reading some of his thoughts on Twitter. But he called it, if you look at the Bitcoin community at large, that there's like the merchant Bitcoin economy, and then there's a mining Bitcoin economy, and if you look at those two communities, there's not much overlap. In fact, if you go to Mining Disrupt in Miami, which I have a few times, you can see that it's completely different folks there than are at most Bitcoin conferences. And to me, that's actually a problem, right? And the reason why it's a problem is because the incentives for Bitcoin mining are driven right now, in my opinion, by folks that are looking to acquire more fiat. They're not looking to Bitcoin mining to stack sats per se. And when you are driven by a fiat based incentive structure versus a Bitcoin based acquisition strategy, you kind of have divergent outcomes, right? And I think that it's incumbent on us as the Bitcoin community to get more involved with Bitcoin mining. And I think that the market is going to force us to become more involved with Bitcoin mining. And I believe what we're building here at SaaS Mining is a way to bring more people across and into Bitcoin mining. I also think like what Ocean is doing, right, with what their mining pool is one of those things that's going to allow more of the Bitcoin community to enter into the Bitcoin mining side of things. But what I've seen over and over again is that the value set, if you look at the publicly traded companies, for instance, they have a fiduciary responsibility to take the dollars their investors have given them and return more dollars, right? By definition, they're playing a game that is driven on dollar-based incentives, not Bitcoin acquisition, right? And so that's going to lead to some different, I think, shorter-term behaviors than a company like ours will wind up exhibiting when we're shaping ourselves. And the only way we make revenue is through the Bitcoin that's mined, right? So I think there's different outcomes, and I think that we ultimately it's incumbent on us as the Bitcoin community to be involved with Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, look, anybody who's a Bitcoiner who understands your freedom money, all these different ideas, where your Bitcoin's coming from. You know who secures the network. You know who facilitates the transactions. It's all because of Bitcoin miners. Without Bitcoin miners, you would not have Bitcoin. Therefore, it's, again, as you said, it's incumbent upon us as Bitcoiners to figure out a way to get involved in the Bitcoin mining network, because decentralization, it's the biggest thing that everybody talks about who's been in Bitcoin for a while. Decentralization of the network, decentralization of the hardware, decentralization of the software. You want a wide net cast into the world. And so, like, we need more people, in my opinion, as again, to draw upon what Bob Burnett has talked about, is we need more rabbit class and horse class miners. We need more people who are building home heat reuse systems. We need more people decentralizing smaller 1 megawatt to 5 megawatt mines all around the world in different locations, whether it's mining off of geothermal volcanoes, whether it's mining off of hydropower dams in Norway, in Paraguay, or in Wisconsin. We need this to build out this network and to strengthen our network, because at the end of the day, we're storing our wealth in a monetary system that is only secured by the miners, and it's only as strong as the weakest link, in lack of a better phrase. So what you guys are doing to not only build a service that allows for people to get into Bitcoin mining, but also helping to educate people about why it is so important, and changing that ethos from mining for fiat to mining for Bitcoin and holding that Bitcoin long term. I think it's a beautiful thing. And again, I've said it a couple of times, but I'm appreciative of entrepreneurs like yourselves for doing what you're doing. I appreciate Bob Burnett. I appreciate the boys over at Ocean for what they're doing to push this needle forward, so that people like myself, people who are not like, look, I'm dumb as a box of rocks. Like I have the entrepreneurial spirit, but at the end of the day, like I am not a very like smart person. I learn from experience, I learn from trial and error. So to have people like yourselves that are pioneering this path forward, that I could easily fall into that path and like build a better, more sustainable, more holistic life is beautiful. So, long-winded way of saying thank you. I kind of want to show people. Are you able to pull up a dashboard to show people like how this software works on the back end? I've got my screen here that shows people on the front end of your website how people can kind of get started. I'll actually real quick. I'm going to
Yeah,
show this.
give me a moment here to yeah.
Yeah, so just bring it up, and I mean, I'm just going to kind of go through and show people your guys' website. If you guys go to the link at the bottom of the screen, or just click the link in the description of the show notes, you can go to SaaS Mining, and you can kind of see they have a ton of resources. If you click the resources, they've got blogs, they've got news articles. This is all in an effort, as we said, to help educate the community around Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining specifically. So you can shop rigs on their website, and you can take those rigs and actually get them hosted in, see right here, it says the Norway data center, mine for 0.46 kilowatt hour cents a kilowatt hour. I mean, it's a great opportunity for $11,000 American. You can get in. It's $468 monthly revenue roughly. I mean, that's going to pay itself back pretty quickly. You can get an S21 right here for $5,900. I mean, these are great prices on these rigs, and getting them hosted for a really cheap rate. I mean, this is absolutely incredible.
Yeah, thank you, man. Well, I just want to go back to a couple comments before I jump in and present here what the back end looks like. So first of all, Bob recently became an advisor to SaaS Mining, and I think we built a friendship over the last couple of years. And I don't know if you recall, I mentioned that I did my computer engineering degree on a Gateway computer. So Bob's been influencing my life for quite some time, since he was the CTO at Gateway that designed that computer that I wound up getting a computer engineering degree on. And he actually designed that computer based on his knowledge from getting a computer engineering degree. So the world is twisted and overlapping in so many ways we don't recognize without looking in the rearview mirror. But yeah, really enjoy working with Bob and agree with his thesis. About monetizing basically these relatively small pockets of energy, and I think that is the future, and we can be more competitive than the publicly traded miners by getting really good at that. Because if you look at it, we are forming capital through our clients to basically crowdsourcing the mining opportunity through client demand, right, to fill a data center. And by doing that, that's actually cheaper than going to Wall Street selling shares and raising it from banks, right? So it's a completely different ethos and mentality, and that capital comes with a different philosophical mindset. And then to just mention briefly about the entrepreneurial thing, man, I have met plenty of highly successful entrepreneurs that were dumb as a rock like you and I, because they just had grit, man. So I think that grit is a defining characteristic. There's a lot of wonderful dreamers and thinkers out there that don't just get in there and roll up their sleeves and get after it. And it's ideas are a dime a dozen. It really comes down to the execution, and that takes grit. So
I say that I'm dumb as a box of rocks only because like there's so many things in the world to learn and to know, and I don't have time to learn everything. I'm not stupid, guys. Like I don't think that I'm stupid. I just think that there's a lot of things that I don't have the patience and time to learn and understand. And so that's why I'm appreciative of guys like yourself who are smart in ways that I'm not. I guess that's a better way, a more politically correct way of saying what I said.
oh man, it's none of us have got the full picture, man. But I will say that it the rising tide lifts all boats, and the rising tide for all of us is Bitcoin. It's making us all look like heroes. But let me share the dashboard, the back end, and before I do, let me just mention briefly that the mining rig that I own personally, that's running in Wisconsin, is actually owned by my wife. So did that because she's Portuguese, and so for tax purposes, just made a lot more sense for her to be the owner. And so what you can see here is I've got one mining rig. It's a 100 terahash unit S19J Pro. So it's running a little bit low, but it also has LuxOS on it. So that's probably just optimized for efficiency. This is how much Bitcoin I've received since January of last year. I'll shift that over to sats so you can see it. So 11 million sats. And then I've got at the mining pool about the 250,000 sats, and 400,000 will be the threshold for payout. So, I started off with 25, I think 35,000 sats a day were coming in. But as the networks got more competitive, it just takes longer and longer to earn sats. So I can go to the earnings tab here as well, see when my next payout is coming, how close I am to getting to that 400,000 threshold. I can also come along and see, all the payouts that have occurred. So the difference between this 400,000 payout and the 380,000 that was actually received is where our 15% cut comes from at SaaS Mining. And then I can trace all the Bitcoin transactions on the blockchain here, so I can go see them in real time. So this is like the monthly service plan, how much I've paid. We're working on getting invoices backdated and on here. So again, as I've mentioned, we've been building the airplane as we've been flying it. And one of the things that we had to do this year was actually rebuild our entire platform, because we didn't build it for the scalability it needed. We didn't know when we launched that we'd be as successful as we have been. And then on the back end, I can update my wallet. And then we've got an affiliate plan. So that's it at the moment. We've got a lot more planned. I think probably the biggest opportunity on the horizon right now for us is we've started conversations with Ocean, which, Bob Burnett's been an investor in, and we spoke about Mark earlier as the president there. But yeah, we're working on getting integrated so we can offer Ocean as a mining pool option to our clients as well, who have definitely been asking that because they're Bitcoiners and believe in the decentralization of the hash rate, and everything that's gone on with Antpool has definitely disturbed the Bitcoin community quite a bit. We get that, so we're working to integrate Ocean into the offering as well here.
That's incredible. I mentioned it before when looking at the front end. The way that your guys's dashboard looks, like everything is so clean. It's very organized. It's very neat. It's appealing to look at. And so I just, again, you guys are raising that bar for hosting higher and higher and higher, making it just a clear like win for the people who are using your service. um I wanna specifically point people to SaaS Mining and say, hey, look, guys, like even if you've got a good power price, say you're 5, 6, 7 cents, you're not gonna beat the price that you're gonna get in Norway. I mean, I was looking at that. That's like what, 0.045 cents a kilowatt hour. That's half of what I'm paying over here. That's incredible. I think so. When you guys are looking for these sites, are you specifically targeting, yes, you're specifically targeting hydropower and renewables? Is that kind of the factor that kind of plays into how you can offer such cheap power prices?
Yeah, so that's part of it. It's also part of it is our methodology, right? Like, so what I mean is we take a percentage of the pool payout, right, when it occurs, and as a result, we have a different set of incentives, right? We're not incentivized to mark up the electricity price, and we're not incentivized to make money by selling mining rigs. So for us, it's really like, hey, how do we create an opportunity for our clients to really acquire Bitcoin at a discount? And that's what we focus on. So there's kind of the overlapping Venn diagram of things that we look for in a data center operator that we're going to partner with is, hey, what is the source of power and how much is it? Of course. But the number one thing is the data center operator themselves. Like, so many relationships in this industry have fallen apart in the hosting model because a lot of folks have come at this type of a relationship thinking that this is a transaction instead of a marriage, right? Like, we are contracting and developing this data center relationship, and we're going to be in that relationship for at least 3 years, right? Like, that means you need to approach this with a long-term mindset. And that's what I found is a lot of folks in the industry from the hosting perspective simply sat down at the table and said, numbers look good, let's do this. And then jump in together, and pretty quickly there's a divorce happening because one side didn't realize what the other side needed in a certain way. And so yeah, I spend a lot of time on the data center operator, and spend a long time just building trust and figuring out who I can work with. So energy type, price, data center operator, and then jurisdiction. Like we intentionally are distributing our data centers in different jurisdictions because our perception is that there is risk in every jurisdiction, and the only way to truly run this business model to avoid that is to distribute your revenue streams across multiple jurisdictions. And so, as proof of that, surprisingly, right, we've been having mining rigs hung up at customs right now in the U.S. Like, I wouldn't have guessed that the U.S. would be at risk, but if I was running our business model only in the US right now, I would not be able to import more Bitmain mining rigs, which is the primary mining rig that we've been selling. And I would have been stuck growing my revenue for the last couple months. We have one client, thankfully, and just one client that has had his mining rigs held up at customs, and that's been going on for more than a month now. But I can't imagine if I was growing my business in the US right now, trying to deal with that particular headache where I couldn't even get my hardware to continue to grow my revenue. So, it's working out for us, this approach and this idea. I mean, we are a US based company. We've got a US data center, and it makes sense to me from a risk mitigation standpoint that we figure out how to operate in different jurisdictions. And yeah, it's not the easy route. Certainly finding a big data center and just in one location and going in on that would be a whole lot easier. But the resilience that we gain as an organization and the lessons we learn from operating in multiple different nations, I think is going to pay dividends as we scale our business.
Along those lines is like there are abundant places in the world with, again, abundant geothermal, hydropower, sun resources to mine Bitcoin. And a lot of these places, as we alluded to before, you can't sell that power to communities. You can't transfer that power from one place 100 miles to the nearest community that would therefore be a buyer of that power. So again, you have this perfect symbiotic relationship. It's going to take time, as you no doubt well know. It takes time to build out these types of mining sites and find the correct relationship between, the data center operator and yourselves, and join those together. What are some of the end goals that you guys have, like looking out into the future, 5-10 years? Do you have anything in the pipeline already, or is Norway kind of like your tip of the spear at this point?
So we do have our partnership there. This is a pilot for us with the heat reuse technology. Our data center operator has been developing this. They're like fourth generation tech at this point. I've not seen or heard anybody that is further along in understanding how this works. And really, it would only be able to exist coming out of a European perspective because the electricity prices are so much higher there, right? In order to be competitive as a Bitcoin miner, they've had to develop heat reuse technology. And I think over time, the entire market's going to gravitate that way. I mean, if this is a race to get the cheapest electricity, well, when you combine your electricity costs with the revenue you get from selling heat, well, I mean, I'm sorry, that's a competitive advantage. How do we all not end up there over time if we can figure out how to scale that? So I think it's a key strategic relationship for us with several other data centers lined up over the course of the next year. We're hoping to grow that relationship. And I think more importantly, our vision is to be the premier spot for anybody that wants to acquire Bitcoin the native way and to acquire wild sats. Ultimately, I believe that we are building an experience that's going to trump the exchange-based acquisition experience. And as a result, my focus for competition is not with hosted Bitcoin companies, but with exchanges. I believe that over time, what we're actually seeing play out right now is that Bitcoin liquidity is disappearing off exchanges. I think we're at like a 5-year low at the moment. Last numbers I saw were like 2.2 million Bitcoin were left on exchange. Simple numbers say that at $100,000, that's $220 billion. Global liquidity right now is 92 trillion. So that $220 billion worth of Bitcoin that's sitting on exchanges right now is 0.2% of the overall global M2. I mean, it's an absurdly small amount, right? So you see how people behave with stores of value, how they sit on them with their beachfront homes they never go to, their mountaintop escapes that they might get to once a year, condos in cities that aren't used. And you wonder, like, okay, for the first time in Bitcoin's history, we're seeing Bitcoin's price go up and Bitcoin's availability on exchanges going down. We know that the 3-year hodl wave, or the people that have been holding for 3 years, is higher than it's ever been. And you just start to wonder, okay, at some point, are we going to be able to go to exchanges and buy Bitcoin? Or is that just going to be, a thing of the past where, there'll still be private pools of liquidity for Bitcoin someplace else, but the exchange-based acquisition strategy just disappears and you're only going to be able to get it from mining or earning it some other way, right? And so my personal belief is that the market is just coming to us. All we have to do is just continue to exist and continue to build. So that's the 5-10 year sort of vision is, we're the exchange of not even exchange, but we're just your Bitcoin outlet for the future.
Yeah, that's an exchange, man. You're exchanging monetary value for a different monetary value. You're exchanging dollars for Bitcoin in a sense. I mean, I'm paying for a miner. I'm paying for the electricity to run that miner. I'm paying for the software service, and I'm getting Bitcoin on the back end. I mean, and I think that's a better way. Again, going back to this idea of wild sats, it's sats that have not been touched by another person or another computer or another network. It's freshly minted. They're virgin coins, and it's a beautiful thing because they're not directly tied to my name. They're not directly tied to my identity, and that's a big thing that a lot of people are very concerned about is the amount of Bitcoin that is tied to someone's ID and IP address. So yeah, it's a beautiful thing, man. I urge people to take a look at SaaS mining. How many slots do you have opening up in Norway?
Oh man. So we had 143 slots, and I believe if this is airing in January, we will be sold out because we're down to about 20-25 at the moment, and the site goes live the week after we record this. So that's the 19th of December. It will go live. So it may be too late for clients to take a piece out of Norway here, but certainly we have more opportunities that'll be coming up the pipeline in the coming months.
Yeah. Yeah, you guys are going to continually develop this, continually work. I'd love to see you guys with 50 megawatts under management, in the next couple of years, just being able to diversify your guys' portfolio. So I'm gonna point people to the link on your screen. It's gonna be rolling across, or just click the link in the description of the video because that's where you can find Kent and you can kind of reach out. Quickly before we start wrapping up here, Kent, can you tell everybody else, where they can find you if they want to get a hold of you, or yeah, just where they can reach you?
Well, I think just to go back to your comment a moment ago, I think if we do our job right and the bull market really puts the wind to our sails, the first year of operation, we were able to stand up about not quite a megawatt and a half, 2 megawatts, somewhere in that area, and now we're ending this year at about 8 megawatts. So it's not out of the cards for us to get to that 50 megawatt ideal in the next year or so. We'll see what we can accomplish. But where you can find me is at K Halliburton on X, right? And then sazmining.com. be the other place. I am on Noster as well. If people want to reach out to me there, I'm not going to try to quote my InPub here because that would bore people to death. But it's a complicated thing to communicate verbally. But yeah, DMs are open on X. That's probably the best way to find me. And I do get some interesting reach outs as we're out there. But yeah, please, it's we'd love for people to join the journey and open the trap door that's at the bottom of the rabbit hole when you investigate Bitcoin. I feel like a lot of Bitcoiners are starting to fall through that trap door and realize what mining's about. And I think, come on in. The water's warm here, and it's a good place to learn a lot more about Bitcoin, energy, time. Yeah, well, quite literally. It's your Bitcoin journey really expands dramatically when you get to the reality of the physics of where Bitcoin comes from.
Yep, absolutely. I've always said that, diving in is the best way to gain knowledge and understanding. You can learn a lot from a book, but you can learn a whole hell of a lot more by having, skin on the line and, putting your feet in the water. I also think, I don't know how many people are listening to this that are mine operators, but, it might be beneficial for any operators out there who are running off of, renewable energy, who are looking to get into the hosting side of things. Maybe reach out to Kent and see if there's a symbiotic relationship there with SaaS Mining and whatever company that you're running. It could be something that could help you out, moving into the future with, mining getting a lot more difficult. Just a suggestion for anybody out there. Kent, we're going to wrap this up here in a second, but I ask everybody on the show who comes on, I ask them a very similar or the same question. And I do this because I like to understand the perspective of who I'm talking to, and the audience, kind of enjoys it as well. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. Kent, what does Bitcoin mean to you?
Hmm. It's cliche, but I am gonna say freedom, but I want to expand on that just a moment because I know it's so cliche. I think it's freedom on a species level, um, and why I say that is because if you look at the human species ever since we sort of moved from hunter gatherer sort of era and into cities, there's always been a wrestling match to be the one that controls the money printer. And for the first time in, let's say, probably 5,000 years of modern human history, Bitcoin represents an opportunity for us to move that fight and that focus from the money printer to using that creative energy that has been going towards acquiring ownership of the money printer into other matters. So I see it's a form of adulting of the human species for us to move the money printer responsibility to math, energy, and encryption ultimately. And I'm quite excited to see what humanity becomes. I mean, I probably won't be around for it really, but I do think that it's a turning point in our species evolution.
I completely agree with that, man. Like, I love hearing people's perspective on it because, one person could say Bitcoin is freedom, but they don't have a good way to articulate why they think that it's freedom. And so, I've had a couple of guests say that they believe it's freedom, and that's what they believe Bitcoin is. And you've really articulated that thought and helped to clear a couple things up. And now I think the audience understands a little bit more of where you're coming from and why you do what you do. So one last time, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for the software and the service that you're building and the product. Hopefully I can send some customers and clients your way and help grow the education and the Bitcoin network as a whole.
Appreciate it, Trevor. Yeah, thanks for the opportunity to be on here, and good getting to know you. And look forward to anybody that reaches out and wants to start their mining journey. I'd love to help you.
For sure. Well, guys, this has been the Build a Mind podcast. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did enjoy it, if you like the show, please leave a comment, subscribe. Let us know how you're appreciating it or liking it. Let us know, your thoughts and what we can do better going on in the future. I'm always looking for constructive criticism. So with that, we're going to close up for the day, and we will see you the next time. Thank you so much, everyone.
Please note, the Build a Mind podcast provides information for general educational purposes only. This information should not be construed as legal, financial, or investment advice. We do not guarantee the accuracy or completeness of any information presented, and we encourage you to consult with a professional advisor, legal advisor, and/or financial advisor before making any financial decisions. The Build a Mind podcast and its affiliates are not responsible for any losses incurred as a result of using the information provided.